G'day guys, today's May the 9th, 2025, and we've got some pretty big news in store. We've got tons of looter shooter news, so Destiny, Borderlands 4, The Division even, and then some stuff came out for Elden Ring Nightreign as well, and I want to go over that, and I will just a little bit later in the video, but first let's get into the looter shooter news. First up on the docket, let's start with Destiny 2. On Tuesday, Bungie announced the next year of content for Destiny 2, and it's pretty wild actually. I know a lot of people weren't expecting multiple Destiny drops around the sort of same time as Marathon, but in reality it kind of makes sense, because seeing as Destiny is a live service game, they can't run the same season for months and months on end. A lot of people, myself included, were expecting some small content drops like a free update or a filler season, or, something like Season of the Brave. I think that was like really solid filler content, just to sort of tide people over until the final shape, but in this case it would be till Marathon. But it looks like there's actually some pretty big stuff in store for the looter shooter. We're going to go way more into specifics around the time that these DLCs actually launch, but I want to cover some of the basics now. The Edge of Fate is launching on July 15th, bringing a new destination, Kepler, and a full overhaul to the gear system with Armor 3.0 and the new tiered items. They're also doing a free update in September, which will bring back the fan favorite location, the Plague Lands from Destiny 1, which may finally be setting us up for a returning raid from Destiny 1, being Wrath of the Machine. Took me a minute. It's slipped my mind because we've been told so much that we're not going to be getting it. Last few years they've been pretty much saying oh look, we're probably not going to end up remastering the Rise of Iron content, Wrath of the Machine, all of that. But they did announce on Tuesday that Plaguelands is coming back, and that probably means Archon's Forge, that forklift that people would drive sparrows into. That's kind of all I can remember about Plaguelands. They've also announced a second major DLC drop slated for December this year. It's called Renegades, and it's Star Wars inspired. It's kind of divisive, this one. They talked a lot about how Star Wars has kind of inspired the last few years of Destiny, and they wanted to do an homage in the next expansion. Based on what we saw, I think it's a branded collaboration. We've seen lightsabers, the Darth Vader, Kylo Ren, and General Grievous cosmetics, and we've seen Tatooine. There's already been the Star Wars cosmetic collaboration in Destiny, so while Bungie hasn't outright said that it's branded Star Wars content, I'm almost certain that it'll be a Disney Star Wars Destiny 2 Renegades sort of subtitle. I personally don't like that. Destiny has so many stories and concepts that just haven't been explored. I'm very, very big on Destiny lore, and I have been since I was 11 when Destiny came out. At the same time, I understand that they want fun content and that will sell well. They're trying to attract and I guess sort of retain a certain audience, that are big Star Wars fans, and I get that. A lot of the comments and stuff I've been seeing are people super excited, but I asked, my whole clan in Destiny, and none of them care, and few of them are big Star Wars fans. They couldn't really care if it's a Star Wars crossover. They would prefer a normal one. I'm kind of in the same camp, but I think we'll just have to see when we start getting towards it, what some of the details are like. Again, we'll probably do a full analysis video based on the whole situation, one a little bit closer to launch, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that. Continuing with looter shooter news, let's talk about Borderlands 4. A new trailer dropped this week showing off more gameplay, weapons and the Vault Hunters. While the modern Borderlands sort of art style is still going pretty strong, it seems that we have a really solid mix now of the Borderlands 1 and 2 sort of story and dialogue and that, with the gameplay aspects of 3 that people really liked. Replayability, mayhem mode, all of those. Not to say that Borderlands 1 and 2 and pre-sequel to an extent weren't replayable, but 3 just sort of had all these extra levels and just because there were more like weapon variants and all of that. It just was a little bit more advanced. Um, there is a very special corner of my heart dedicated to Borderlands, mainly Borderlands 2. But the expanded like skill and weapon systems of 3 really stuck with me. And I'm glad to see that we're going to be seeing more of that going forward. They're not just sort of writing off Borderlands 3 as a failure, even though like the DLC stories were really good, just because the main story was pretty terrible. Doesn't mean the gameplay was bad, and doesn't mean they didn't do well with the story, because like the Handsome Jack DLC and the Krieg DLC were killer. With this new trailer, Gearbox announced that they're pulling forward the release date of Borderlands 4 to September 12th from the 23rd. And that's 11 days before previous working title. We don't see that happen anymore, really. We don't see publishers and developers like pulling their games forward. It's usually a delay. And look, they've specifically said that it's not to avoid other competitive titles like Marathon. I think that they know that if they can pull the looter shooter audience that would have been going from Destiny to Marathon, if they can catch them, maybe Destiny's in a slump or whatever, they catch them just before Marathon drops, like a week or so before, they'll retain them through the initial sort of week or two of Marathon hype. The September 12th release date also pushes the game to be more in line with their standard sort of release schedule for like middle of September. So Borderlands 2 and 3 both came out, I think it was the 12th of September and the 18th, off the top of my head. September is historically like a great time to release games, where companies sort of have like a safe few months to develop an audience before the Christmas rush starts happening. And at that Christmas rush, you have a lot of competition with games like Call of Duty. It would have been GTA this year as well, but that got pushed back a little bit. All right, to round out the looter shooter talk today, let's talk about The Division 2, a name that you probably haven't heard in a little while. A brand new DLC, Battle for Brooklyn, is coming out on May 27th. And if you've been holding off on like getting back into or getting into The Division, now might be a really, really good time to actually just jump back in. The current ongoing story is like next level, stupidly confusing. I've been playing for like a month now, just sort of gearing back up for this DLC. And I don't understand the story anymore. I'm completely lost. But don't worry, Battle for Brooklyn is an entirely standalone story that I don't think it will affect the main plot. It'll be pretty much entirely self-sustained we'll see like consequences of it, like the new enemy faction variant and stuff. We'll see that in different activities and all that. It's not going to be like a one and done sort of thing. In the DLC, one of the major factions from the first game and kind of in the Division 2, the Cleaners, are ravaging Brooklyn with these purple variant of their flamethrowers, and you got to go in and stop them. And that's kind of all we know at the moment. But we know that with the update, they're making a bunch of changes directed towards specifically like new and returning players, where they're going to be simplifying some of the unnecessarily like convoluted systems. And more broadly, over the last like little while, they've added a bunch of ways to specifically target farm loot and upgrade gear, and they've added new like long-term grind reward systems. If you're interested, maybe you've played The Division before, maybe you haven't, now would be like a really good time to revisit. And unlike some games I know, there aren't really any paywalls for accessing old seasonal content or anything, so everything that they add, once the season is over, all the content's like playable again for everybody. It's not removed, it's not time gated, there's none of that really. You can kind of just go back and play whatever you want whenever you want. Next up, let's talk about probably one of the most exciting games of the year, Elden Ring Nightreign. It dropped a new trailer this week going over the like general flow of the roguelike runs, and they also showed off the like almost full roster of characters. They didn't show one of them. I mean, they did like very, very briefly, but they didn't explain it like they did with all the other ones. This is a pretty unique system for a FromSoft game where Players generally will shape their own character as they progress, but in Nightreign, each starting class or character has fully unique passives and Ashes of War that we've never really seen like playable in a FromSoft game. I think sort of Elden Ring and Sekiro had aspects of that where you could get, you know, Ashes of War or special techniques in Sekiro, where you could do boss moves like Waterfowl Dance and all of that. But it's kind of special in that we haven't really gotten like boss moves and big flashy stuff besides a few minor examples. It establishes like arguably way more replayability through the active gameplay differences that we tend not to see. I think probably the closest example would be like in Armored Core, where each Armored Core has a generally very distinct like style and play style. But for Soulsborne and Elden Ring fans, it might be a strange jump to go into this game with characters with preset styles and movesets. But I mean, like, look at some of these Ashes of War and some of these moves that these characters are pulling off. I've always wanted to have those sort of boss movesets and big flashy things like, you know, Slave Knight Gale and Lady Maria in Souls and Bloodborne. And I think a lot of people share the same sort of sentiment. Nightrein's looking like it's going to fulfill that pretty well, and that's coming out on May 30th. So, like, 3 weeks from now, that's pretty exciting. Well, that's everything for the week. Big news if you're a looter shooter fan like myself. And Elden Ring is shaping up to be pretty fun, actually. I was sort of on the fence like a little bit about getting it day one and really getting into it. But some of this stuff is super cool. I'm very, very excited for it. What are you excited for? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you've made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe.